Go for it. Okay. Hey, you guys, let's give everybody a second to come on in. Let us know that you can hear us. Let us know that you can see us. Ramah, you look really chill. Are you at home?
Yeah, I'm home chilling in
You're
Baltimore.
very comfy. You're very comfy.
Yeah, just lounging on a Sunday.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm so glad that you guys are able to come and have your Sunday with us to have this conversation. It's interesting. I've been wanting to have this conversation for a minute. I think that it's important that we talk about the dynamics that we have within the group, what it looks like when we all come together and kind of have this conversation. Like I said, we've been pulling in some really cool stats from the first 24-hour snapshot of our NOMADNESS Travel and Diversity consensus. Okay, I got the first I can see and hear you. I appreciate you, boo. Thank you. Yes, everybody, let us know where you're watching from. Let us know if any of these faces up on the screen are familiar, especially for those of you that are in the tribe. I see everybody coming in. Hey, Tina, how are you? So we're continuing our conversations wrapped around our survey. So first things first, let me post this in here um, and get into this. I'm putting the link to the survey in the comment section. So you can pull it, send it to your friends, any groups that you're in, things of that nature. Also remember and let anybody know that's coming in the comments that you can actually get the link to the survey in the caption of this video. It's also in there twice too. So essentially about a month ago, NOMADNESS opened up with the NOMADNESS Diversity and Travel Consensus. For those of you who don't know, right now there is only one data set that is out in the world right now representing what they say are Black travelers, African-American travel behaviors. And we want to be able to own our own data and tell our own story. And what we're doing is Q4 of this year, we're coming out with our own data report that includes interviews with certain tribe members and travelers that fall into some of the subsets that we end up finding as being trends really within our community. And the whole essence of us doing this is to make sure that we are represented accurately, and by us, we own our conversation, our data, our behavior, skill sets, all of that stuff. And so we decided to do this pivot during COVID and really start to pay attention and dig down into this. So as we sit at tables and really put initiatives forward for Black and Brown travelers around the diaspora, we can talk from a place of knowledge. I'm glad to report that we are already well over the sample size of the only report that's out right now in this. We're over 1,000 survey takers more. Our goal is to hit at least 5,000 by September 1st. And we are somewhere in the 3,000s. I have to check the number again, but we're on the move and we really just want everybody's help. So if you got your tried and true travel crew, if you are a part of other travel groups for Black and Brown travelers, if you are of yourself, if you got these WhatsApp groups, definitely take the link, drop it in. And today we're talking specifically with the fellas. I'm excited for this conversation. I'm excited for a number of reasons because in NOMADNESS, historically, we have always been somewhere between 75 and I would say 78% female as far as our membership, right? And we love the fellas. We love y'all. We love you. And Ramah and Kamasi are two of our, tribe members that have been around for a minute, that have just activated events. I know, Ramah, there's so many events that you threw meetups even at your home, in the DMV area. Kamasi is actually one of our admins and has been working with us on the inside. So I want to give the fellas a moment to introduce themselves, but we're going to get into one specific stat that came up that stated that within the first 24 hours of us releasing our survey, 88% of our survey takers were women. So we're looking at this 12% of our men like, yo, we want to make sure that you are represented well too and accurately too. So where are y'all? And I have some questions that are not just going to be about the survey, but also about our fellas in the community. So to start off, I'm going to get out of the way and I'm going to start with Ramah. Just introduce yourself to the people, anything that you want them to know.
Well, really brief, short and to the point. I'm Ramah Vaughn, DMV tribe, living in Baltimore.
Nice. Kamasi.
I'm Kamasi Hill. I'm originally from Detroit. Been living in Chicago for the past 16 years. I'm a part of the Chicago Tribe. Been a member of Nomadness since 2016, and I'm an admin as well.
I love it. I love it. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. So I want to jump into the psyche of y'all just a little bit. I'm going to deep dive into just a couple of your secrets, not too many, I promise. The first question I have for you tonight is, how do men approach travel? Like, what needs to be on the list of your musts for you to pop up somewhere? Are there any aspects that you think that you go about looking for travel that may be different from your female counterparts? Do you have to be with the crew? Kind of like, what is your travel stylistic? What are you looking for? Kamasi, I'm going to start with you on this.
Well, I want to be honest and say a part of my own journey into travel, no pun intended, took place very early in my life. So my introduction to travel wasn't through, getting on the internet, finding travel groups and connecting with folks. I've been traveling solo, really, to be quite honest with you, since I was a kid. My parents were a part of the Black Power movement, so they were kind of in and out everywhere, speaking, doing seminars, traveling, going to Africa. And in many respects, in many ways, I was kind of, a part of that. So I was always here. You go to Boston, you stay with your aunt. And I was on a plane by myself at 5 years old. You go to Virginia and stay with your cousins. So traveling really was just a part of my own, early childhood. So when I became older and I started to travel on my own, it really didn't feel any different. I actually didn't know, to be quite honest with you, that men, had a different kind of rubric, or metrics to evaluate whether or not they were going to travel. Until I started really, becoming active in travel groups. So my travel story is unique in that way. But I do understand, that a lot of men have a specific type of interest when they do travel. I think we're going to explore and talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. Brahma, for you, what are some of your musts? What are you looking out for? What do you think even your boys are looking out for when they pick a destination?
So the interesting thing about that, I kind of differ from them a lot. Like, for me, all I need is a cheap flight. I don't need an itinerary. I don't need a beach. I don't need to see who else is going. I don't need to see what Yelp reviews, what restaurants today. I don't need any of that. All I need is a cheap flight, and it could be anywhere. But my friends, and when I say friends, I'm referring to guys that I may have grown up with, went to college with, met through professional organizations, or wherever non-travel related I meet. They need something to pull them in, something, an allure that matches their interest. And I find that their interests differ from women's interests. And if a particular trip doesn't meet their interest, then, and when I say their interest, whatever you would do, whatever activities you would do on that trip, then they don't want to go.
Right,
so
right.
To answer your question, the must-have for me is a cheap flight. Everything else doesn't matter. I can fly somewhere and do nothing and sightsee and eat and just chill the whole weekend and be fine.
Right. Which is dope, which is really, really dope. I think that, I think for women, I don't know, we look at so many different things, but this is a conversation about the men. So I'm going to leave it at that. Here's a question, because both of you brought up the role of travel groups, right? What role do they play in your life when it comes to travel planning? What are your benefits that you would pinpoint for fellas that are that you find that you utilize when it comes to these actual travel groups? What benefits? Do you use them a lot? Do you use them a little bit? Are you there for the days where stuff pops off and it's, tribe after dark, or or somebody acting reckless in the group? Or is it really here for the knowledge and a little bit of all of that stuff? So I'm interested in what role the travel groups play in your planning and just your life overall as a traveler. Kamasi?
So I think several, but I'll just stick with three. I think number one, it's interesting to see other people and where other people go and see the pictures that they post and the experiences that they have and the feedback that they give. So I guess the number one thing is just being a voyeur and an appreciator, a person who's appreciative of the world, and just, you know, being interested in seeing what people are doing when they travel. I think number two, when I look for a travel group, I look for common interests. I look for a lot of international. I prefer to be in a travel group that does international traveling. The domestic stuff, I don't necessarily. There's some domestic places that, you know, I'm interested in, but it's, for the most part, I'm interested in international traveling outside of the United States, and even more specifically, traveling outside of North America. So that's the second thing I look for in a travel group. And I think the third thing I look for is feedback. You know, I'm looking to be in community with people who can give me some perspective, some ideas, some tips, some do's, some don'ts about their travel experiences, so I can make up my own decision as to where I want to go. And if it just so happens that I am going to a place, I will say this: for Tribe, I've never been on a group trip within Tribe. However, I have met so many people in Tribe when I travel. So when I went to Amsterdam, I said, hey, I'll be in Amsterdam, met up with some folks in Tribe. Copenhagen, met up with some folks in Tribe. Australia, met up with some folks in Tribe. So those are the ways in which I use Tribe, and more broadly, those are the ways I use other travel groups as well.
Right. I love this. We got a comment speaking to the domestic versus international. And don't worry, Rama, I definitely want your answer to this. We have Stephen Jones who commented. He said, coming from an urban environment, traveling for us was a road trip to Six Flags. And I think that that's so real growing up. I know for me, it's like having family that ended up, you know, moving from down south, Camden, Columbia, South Carolina, up to New York. You know, it's like that road trip of 14 to 16 hours, depending on who was driving, was one of our annual trips that we had too, that really kind of set the stage. So I love that. Rama, I tossed the question to you, you know, the role of travel groups in your life, in your travel life. What are some of the benefits, and how do you utilize them to go into your planning?
So for me, it's probably two purposes that travel groups serve. One is the meetups. I really love Tribe. It's something about a traveler that when we connect on that level, we could just have fun. And I love Tribe so much that I find myself wanting to go to other cities where I connect with the people that I'm chatting with online. So if Dallas has an event, Dallas Tribe, I fly out there. Chicago Tribe, same thing, I'll fly out there. And I'm like, I really, and especially Detroit Tribe, just that warmth, that good energy makes you go to cities that you wouldn't otherwise and really connect with the people. So I've made lasting friendships with people in various cities just because of the conversations we had online leading to meetups and then traveling to that city for a picnic or a night out or whatever. So that's probably the first thing. The second thing is the trips. It is hard to find people to travel with. Everybody wants to go somewhere, and then when it comes time for the trip, nobody's paid their money, nobody's planned anything, whatever. So in Tribe, all of these like-minded people ready to go somewhere, there have been so many trips that we went on where we didn't even know what was going on in the country. We just saw a cheap flight, and you see everybody swarming onto this deal and buying tickets. And they're like, hey, what is there to do in Guatemala? And we're like, we don't know. Just book your flight and pull up. And you have 20, 30 people or 10 people all booking the same weekend to go to some country you never intended on going, and you have a ball, the best time of your life. So that's probably the two purposes that travel groups serve to me: the people to hang out with and the people to travel with. It's all about the people for me.
You are good for flying somewhere and being at somebody's meetup or barbecue or something. I will never forget seeing you walk into Richmond's barbecue with your somebody's son shirt on.
Yeah,
I was like, that's Rama.
Yeah, I just want to, meet everybody that I talk to online. I'm like, I want to come to your city, see the landmarks, eat the food, and just vibe.
Yeah, I agree. I love that. So here's a question. And as the founder of NOMADNESS, I'm interested in this answer too. And I think you guys maybe hold the key to this side of the conversation. As I said before, in addition to the survey the stat that we're talking about right now, NOMADNESS's average has been an average of 1 to 3, right? 1 guy to 3 women that are in the tribe. If you play your cards right, that's a really good ratio, fellas. Just saying.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I'm interested in you guys' point of view on why you think that is, right? I have my own things that I could potentially, think, but I really would love to hear from men. Like, what do you think feeds that? And is it the same type of ratio that you even see in other travel groups? Like, or is it unique to us? But why do you think that ratio has been consistent? And from day one, it's been like this. Like I said, between 75 to 78% of our community has been women, primarily Black women. What are your thoughts on that, Kamasi?
I think it's a couple reasons. I think number one, I think it's just a matter of interest, and it's a matter of what is the pull. So for a lot of men who I will say this, I know that when it comes to relationship status, a lot of times men who do travel more are single. I think it's been my experience that looking with women, they don't allow necessarily their relationship status to prevent them from traveling. It's just not a barrier to entry. I think when it comes to single men, there's a draw. Will there be women there? So men typically travel for 1 to 3 things that I find. They travel for multiple things, but these are the most common. Number 1, women. Number 2, sports or some type of an event. Or number 3, some type of event where there's there could be some type of male bonding experience. But it's those are usually the reasons why a lot of men travel. I think another reason is when it comes to men who do travel, what I find is there isn't a there's more variety in terms of the necessity for their travel experiences to be public, to be on social media. So there's a lot of men who do travel, but they don't necessarily post every picture. They don't necessarily say, here, this is where I am. Hashtag, catch flights, not feelings. I mean, that's just not something that a lot of men necessarily have to do. So, there are a lot of men who do travel. They're just not as public as it is with women. And I'm speaking in very general terms here, but I would say those are the reasons that I think, you don't see a lot of men travel. Especially, you don't see a lot of men travel and publicize it, because I think some men do travel. It's just that you don't necessarily know. I remember before Tribe, I was traveling all the time. I never thought, it really never dawned on me to join a Facebook group and post my travels. I would go, and I'm talking about, there was a time, I would say before I joined Tribe, I had just got divorced. So like I was traveling all the time. 2011 and 2015, I was always traveling. It never dawned on me to post pictures and pull up and it just never crossed my mind to do that. So at least not in the way in which, we celebrate travel in Tribe. And I think that's an important point too. We celebrate travel in Tribe. It's something that we take pride in, we value. And for some men, it's not something necessarily to have a lot of fanfare about. They just do it.
Right. I love that. I posted this up while you were talking, said, true that when I was single, it was all on the low. I think that's a really important distinction. And somebody else is actually commenting now too. It says, yep, we don't publicize our traveling like that in a lot of cases. I do think that is a distinction that I definitely see more with men, like a men versus women thing. I appreciate that insight for sure. Rama, what would you like to add on why you think that this ratio of 1 to 3 kind of exists in the travel sphere.
So I think it, you know, I think it does boil down to interest. When you think about what types of things you would do when it comes to travel, like, of course, you go anywhere in the world, you could do anything at that location. But I find a lot of people like to shop. They like to sightsee. They like to go to museums. They like to do, you know, things like that. And the guys that I know, those things aren't of interest to them. They may like sports, but would they travel outside of the country to watch a sporting event? You know, maybe not. They like music, but would they travel outside of the country to go to a concert? You know, things like that. So I find that the guys that I do know that travel, it's limited to vacations. They're going somewhere with a girl, it's a date, it's their little time together, and it's not publicized. And in terms of talking about it online, I have my social media friends, but then I have just the larger group of men that I know. And most of the guys I know aren't on social media, and the ones that aren't super chatty. So they aren't as active. They may have an account, have a profile, don't post that much, pop online, look at a few pictures, pop off. So just their nature. Not to jump with stereotypes, but kind of some of those things where you say women are better communicators. I think a social network, social media lends to that. I just find in general that there are more women on social media. So then when we look at within a travel group, that's an even smaller subset. So why is it more? I think just the nature of the way that men travel.
I will say one more thing.
Yeah.
I will say one more thing. I have been on trips and I have seen women 5, 6 deep in one room.
Yeah.
It's just not something that brothers do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not, I mean, it's, you know, 2 maybe, but that's even pushing it. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's like we kind of like to have our own, for various reasons. We kind of like to have our own space, and so it's a little bit more expensive when you're not divvying up, you know, a hotel room, like you know, some women do when they travel, and so cost, you know, has something to do with it as well. I mean, I remember when I went to Vegas for the first time in my 20s. And I just remember saving. I mean, I was a young school teacher, didn't really have a whole lot of money. And I just remember saving and saving and saving to try to get this money together because I wanted to gamble and all this other stuff. And I remember my female friends were like, oh, I got $75. You know, they went to Vegas with $75, stayed, ate well, and came back with stuff. You know what I'm saying? It's like, well, and a part of that, you know, a part of that, if we just want to keep it real, was, you know, some of them had the opportunity of getting their drinks paid for. You know, right. I mean, it's just that, you know, yeah, clearly, I mean, that was, you know, it's really, I mean, it wasn't all of them, but they made the situation best for what they were trying to do. And in their own kind of collective group. And that's just not, I haven't found that a lot with male travelers.
Yeah, I posted this up while Ramah was talking. Somebody said, yeah, dudes ain't generally bunking together, solo usually, definitely. But also somebody said snap and post isn't something that men do. Speaking to like just the difference in, you know, how we utilize things like social media and how it may be geared definitely for our communication style. I want to read a comment from Stephen that also popped up. He said, women are more open to establish new relationships from a mutual interest, such as traveling. Men aren't that easy to get together, especially with friendship, in my opinion.
Oh, that's 100% true.
I nailed what you guys are saying.
Yeah, I mean, most of my friends, I'm talking about my homies,
yeah,
aren't men that I've met in the last 15 years. They're men that I've known since late teens, early 20s. I haven't developed like new like male friends and homies in a long time. It's just not something that we do. It happens, but it's not something that happens very often.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ramon, anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I mean it's spot on. We don't bond over some of those common interests the way that women do.
Yeah.
We just don't.
Yeah. Well, I feel better about this as the head of tribe because I was just like, they don't like me. It's run by a Black woman. I don't know what's going on.
No.
I was like, maybe if there was like a dude co-founder or something. I mean, literally, especially the first couple of years of NOMADNESS, I remember with High Council, like we used to really wrap our head around this sometimes and just be like, yo, like, what can we do to attract more of the guys? It was something I want you all to know that it's not something that's ever been thrown under the rug, and something that we just didn't notice or didn't care about. No, we care very much, especially when it came to trips. I love Steven said the trips that he's taken with NOMADNESS have been dope, especially Amsterdam and Johannesburg. I'm still to this day surprised that anybody remembers our trip to Amsterdam. But it's just one of those things where when you take the jump, I think it's an amazing experience. I know, Ramah, you've gone on a number that have been just like, community organized trips with NOMADNESS members that have been really dope. But I want to come back to something that you guys spoke about. Kamasi, you brought up the idea of like, look, it's even hard for like the fellows to get together on any basis, let alone wrapped around travel, especially if they all don't have the same amount of kind of like wanderlust to get out. I am one of these women. I'm a guy's girl, right? Tomboy, grew up like had the girlfriends, but also was like, running with the dudes and, was rough into sports and things like that. And so with that being said, and my first job, a lot of people don't know this. My first ever job was a receptionist at a barbershop. And at 15 years old, to be a young lady blossoming into her own as a receptionist and the sweeper and cleaner of a barbershop. Oh, the things I learned at such a young age.
I have a question for you. I have never seen a receptionist at a barbershop. Where was this?
I grew up in upstate New York. But I was the one, I was like the scheduler and I handled the money in the cash register and I swept up all y'all hair. That's what it was. So I put it on my resume as a receptionist at 15. So with that being said, I learned so much just from an observant position, right? And at a young age, what it did for me as a young woman is it made me really respect male-only spaces. And women, I'm talking to y'all. I love us. I love you. But a lot of times, I even see it on social media. Somebody will post something up somewhere and be like, I'm looking for a comment from the dudes. Here come all the ladies. I'm following it. Just got to say something. And I'm like, ladies, this is not, y'all missing the point here, y'all. And I'm because I know how important women-only spaces are for me and what that feeds for, my community and women that are in our life. I'm a big advocate of male-only spaces. So my question for you all, and you can tie it into travel or not, but I think it's important. Why are men-only safe spaces so important to you in your life? And why should those be honored and respected as such? Kamasi?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's anything profound. I think it's, male safe spaces don't require explanations. They don't require a lot of like, trying to figure out ways to word things, and so you can be very sensitive to, the gender balance in the group. You just kind of say what you want to say. You feel it's just any other space. It's it's any other space where you don't have to code switch, right? You don't have to code switch when you're in male spaces. You can just be yourself in that space and just be direct and be explicit in the ways in which, using the terms, the terminologies, the codes and language that many men use. And so I think it's that simple, but also I think it's, you're going to come together in male spaces to talk about the things that are, interest you. And those conversations are going to kind of happen organically. You're not gonna have to try to figure it out, and and you're gonna get the feedback that either that you want, or you're gonna get the men, we clown each other, we tease each other, we jostle, we do all the things that that men do in those spaces, and it's just that feeling of feeling safe and comfortable, and it's really not that. It's really not a profound answer. It's really that simple.
I also think it's similar to what we look for when we have our women-only spaces. Exactly. It's just your iteration of it as well. Rama, anything that you want to say to that? The importance of honoring male-only spaces.
So I think male-only spaces are really important for us to learn and grow as a man. There are things that I may have went through that I could teach somebody else so that they don't have to go through. Things that we can learn from each other that we may not learn just in a larger cohesive group. So when you're looking at becoming a better person and building and learning and growing, male safe spaces really help toward that enrichment. So I think for me, that's probably the primary benefit.
I love that.
Yeah, and to that point, I think especially when you have male spaces that span the variety of ages or even generations, you hear you're able to kind of either bestow wisdom or benefit from the wisdom of folks in those spaces. And for a lot of men, for various reasons, they're more receptive of hearing those pieces of advice and wisdom from other men. And so, they're more comfortable in hearing that. Whether that's good or bad, that's just the reality. And so I think that's what happens in male spaces as well.
That's real. I love that. Have either of you lived abroad?
Yes.
You lived abroad. Okay. Ramad, where have you lived, Kamasi?
I've lived in Grenada, West Indies for 1.5 years, and then I've lived in the UAE for about 7 months.
Yeah, we just got this. I love this amazing comment from Sean Moore. He said, hearing this conversation about the barbershop just makes me realize how much I miss socialization. Yes. Since I've been bald for over a decade. I thought that was going to go into quarantine, sir.
You need the beard. You need the beard because you can still go to the barbershop.
Give yourself some reason to do that. We have another comment here from a Facebook user that says, "Could you imagine a guys only cigar trip in the DR? That would be mind blowing." I think it is, but I also know why you probably said the DR. Let's just keep it funky, okay?
Well, we're not going to DR until they support our people of color better.
And Haiti, yeah, we got issues with DR anyway, so I feel you with that.
We're riding with Haiti.
Yeah, but I think that's the real, right? That's a perfect comment, but I think that goes into the mentality, which is like, it's not right or wrong, not damned or anything. I make a joke out of it, but that's from real levity because this is the conversation that we need to have. But I think the socialization part, especially in quarantine, especially for people who are avid travelers, this shit is real. And it's actually interesting they bring that up because the next conversation we're going to have later on this week is going to be talking to people who actually have traveled during quarantine and who are thinking about it right now and ways that people can protect themselves because we're kind of on two opposing sides of this. And I think it's cool for us to have a combo somewhere in the middle. But I asked if anybody lived abroad because there's two points of view for this next question. As men who have both traveled and lived abroad, how are you feeling right now being a Black man in America at the present moment?
Ooh, you get oof.
Yeah, I've been waiting for this combo, y'all. I've been waiting for like 8 years to talk about this combo, and I can't get my brothers on here and not speak to kind of like, what are you feeling right now? What's going on? What is your view of America versus the rest of the world? Anybody making exit plans? Like what is that actually, what does that look like? Kamasi, if you want to take that first.
So let me just say this. I think I'm not sure if you want to generate different responses based on generations, right? The generations of Black men. I'm almost 50 years old. So like I have a different I've been a black man in America for a minute. And so I'm not surprised. You know what I'm saying? Like, the things that happen in America just don't shock me. They don't surprise me. So I think a part of that is this, I've developed a kind of psychic armor, to just being a black man in America. I also survived, one of the worst time periods of being a young black man, which was the late 80s, early 90s. I mean, there's nothing worse than that time period for being a black, as bad as it is now. Trust me, there's nothing worse than what happened in the late 80s, early 90s.
What makes you say that specifically?
Just by the numbers of death that was happening around us all of the time. I live in Chicago. I think last year, like 469 people were murdered, black, homicides in the black neighborhood. In the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, that was 900 and something. I mean, that was just an average year was like 900. So I remember that time. I was a teenager during that time. I was a young man going to college in Washington, D.C. in 1990, which in Washington, D.C. was the murder capital of the country at the time. So I saw it because, for those of who know Washington, D.C., it's so small. So I think a part of my own experience being black, being man in America for so long, I've just kind of developed this disposition towards America where I'm like, yep, this is kind of business as usual. I think the other thing that I feel a little bit better about, I guess the silver lining, is when I was experiencing those things, there was no Black Lives Matter, right? I didn't see a collective organizational force trying to respond to some of the issues in our community. And now that I see that, and I see that young people have at least that as an organization or the other organizations they can look toward to kind of help, deal with the issues of redress, I feel a little bit better about it. I think the other thing too is I'm decidedly middle class. I'm a black man who is middle class, who has no children. So I can inculcate myself from a lot of those issues simply because I have resources. So right now, I'm thinking about leaving the country again, and I'm like, and I can do that. I mean, I could pick up and go with no problem. So a part of my identity as a black man is not simply the fact that I am a black man and that my body is vulnerable. I also have resources, and I think that's an important part to name as well.
I agree with that. Yeah. Rama, definitely. How are you feeling at this moment, just being a black man in America, having that worldview and world experience?
So it's definitely exhausting. It's exhausting to feel oppressed as a black man, as a black person, just constantly discriminated against and marginalized. And then, you travel the world and you think, wow, if I lived here in this country, I wouldn't have to go through these problems. I might have a different set of problems, but it won't be those problems. And then you start to think about your exit plan. And for me, the only reason probably why I haven't left, because I really feel like I could live anywhere. When I go to travel, I feel like I could pick anywhere to go. So to live, it would be the same. Not having my friends and family with me, that's probably the only reason I haven't left. And everybody says, oh, well, you could just get on a flight. You fly all the time anyway. And I'm like, it's a little different. It's a little different. So to answer the question, sometimes it weighs heavy on you, especially when you go back and look at, any historical writings, Frederick Douglass, or watch some historical speeches, and you're like, wow, they were dealing with the same problems I'm dealing with now. If I have children one day, unfortunately, the reality, the way that the trajectory is going, they might still be dealing with those same problems. And then that gets a little frustrating.
I totally get it. From the other side of that spectrum, as a woman and a woman who, wants to, start this journey towards motherhood, it's about thinking about all of these things, right? And looking at it. I was saying Spain has been popping up for me a lot during quarantine, and the idea of like, when would that move be made? Anybody who knows me personally knows I'm absolutely obsessed with South Africa and I'm definitely going to live there. However, what I realized during this time of COVID is that is such a big family permanent move for me. And there's still some moves that I need to make business wise. And, at this point that I don't want to end up being so far away and having it cost so much to travel everywhere else. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I'm definitely looking at some spots in Europe right now. And just considering these things. So that's kind of my tale. My question to you both, my last question, unless anybody has any in the comments, is America home? Are you considering moving out? Are you considering getting property at least somewhere else? I don't know if any of y'all qualify for dual citizenship and that type of situation, but is America home or one of your homes?
Yes.
Kamas?
America is home. But as Gil Scott Heron said, home is where the hatred is, right? And you can interpret that in many different ways. So it's home. It'll always be home. If I can quote someone else, David Walker said, "America is more our home than the whites because our blood has enriched the soil." So I'll never ever disown America as a landmass, right? I'll never disown America as a space, a social space of communal affirmation and identity, and kind of a collective comfort amongst my people here in the United States of America. But outside of that, like, no, America doesn't feel like home all the time. Tony Blackman once said in a documentary about hip hop, she was specifically talking about hip hop's toxic relationship with Black women, and how hip hop has utilized these violent tropes consistently, these misogynistic tropes consistently against Black women. But Black women still love hip hop, right? It's like she said, it's kind of like hip hop is your home, but hip hop is still beating you. That's kind of how America is to me. It's like, it's my home, but it's still beating me. So it'll always be my home, but I have no allegiance to actually living here for the rest of my life. And I think like I said before, because I do have the means, because I don't have any children, because I am a traveler, because I am a citizen of the world, I am curious about living and residing in other spaces. But America will always be home. It'll just be the home that I've always had a complicated relationship with.
Right. I love that. Ramon?
So for me, I go where the wind blows. If one day I wake up and say, hey, I want to go somewhere else, like I said before, the only thing that's really keeping me is seeing my family and friends on a regular basis. And it's like, all right, well, we may have to just FaceTime. We may have to just set up little Zoom dates or something, because if the urge, there's nothing holding me. So if the urge really moves me one day, yeah, I can move. Now, I'm not actively looking at any property anywhere, but I'm open for whatever.
I love it. Gentlemen, this went longer than I anticipated. Just an amazing conversation with you all. I appreciate your time this evening. I appreciate your insight. To everybody that is watching, again, thank you for this conversation. We're bringing a couple of them based off of the travel stats that we got within the first 24 hours of us opening up our NOMADNESS Diversity and Travel Consensus. Again, if you have not taken the survey, please help us on our road to 5,000 by September 1st. The link to the survey is in both the caption of this video as well as in the comments wherever you're located. Send it to your crew, any travel groups that you are in for people of color. We want to make sure that we're represented across the board accurately, and holding the travel industry to account, because as you can clearly see, we're out here. To the fellas, I really, really appreciate you. There is a lot that I also learned as a woman. that I learned also as a woman who happens to run a community like NOMADNESS Travel Tribe. And I'm very, very grateful for your time this evening. Where can the people find you if they want to get more information on you? Rama, I know the social media interactions a little bit different, but
I keep all, my IG and all that on the low, but on Facebook, Rama Vaughn.
Awesome. And Kamasi?
IG Amazing Prophet is my handle. Amazing Prophet.
I love it. Gentlemen, have a great evening. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank you. All right.